Hey guys, welcome back to the Fanspo Hoops podcast. I'm Eamon Robinson, the host from Australia.
My name is Mohid.
I'm TK from Canada.
Today we're going to go over the Eastern Conference off-season, talk about our winners, our losers, and just recap some additions, some departures, and some extra stuff relating to what some players have shown maybe in FIBA or something like that. So with no further ado, we'll go alphabetical. So let's start with the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks, obviously, the headline of their offseason was trading DeJounte Murray. At first value, a lot of people thought the Hawks got fleeced, including myself. But overall, this offseason they brought in Zachary Sachet, Juricic in the draft, young fella in Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., Cody Zeller, 2 first-round picks, and just a few other players. They lost DeJounte Murray, Sadiq Bey, AJ Griffin, and Bruno Fernando. What are the key players, or just something key which stands out for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought for the DeJounte Murray trade as well was, okay, I think they could have gotten more value. But I do think Dyson Daniels is going to be really good in Atlanta. I do think that was a really good pickup. And then in terms of Sachet, I'm fine with that going number 1. In most other classes, you'd be looking for a guy who can be the star on the championship team. But in this draft class, you were never really going to get that. And I think Sachet can be a very good role player on a championship team in the future. So I think overall they had a pretty solid offseason.
Yeah, I think DeJounte for them was almost like addition but subtraction. It's nothing to do with DeJounte as a player, just the fit was just very, very bad. So being able to get Dyson Daniels, who's a young player who has shown a lot of growth the last couple of years. On defense, he's already elite. So if he can bring you some level of decent offense, he can be a very valuable player for them. They also got the 2025 Lakers pick, and given how stacked the West is, the Lakers could easily miss the playoffs, so they can get a lottery pick as well, another one. And they get another first too. This is a great trade for them, and Sachet is a good pickup. I like the Juricic pickup as well. Yeah, I think it was a very successful offseason by them. Just getting rid of DeJounte and getting an overall well-fitting roster. And have a good young core as well.
Completely agree. I like talking about Dyson Daniels. If he plays like he has for Team Australia and FIBA as a very good cutter, probably their second best player, really shooting the 3-ball at a really high clip, efficient, harassing on defense, then this, and only at age 21, imagine him in 5-6 years with development. He's honestly the prototypical guard to put next to Trae Young. I wish a player like Dyson Daniels came 4 or 5 years ago to watch Trae and them develop, but it's interesting to see what the Hawks will do with Trae Young if this fit works out now. So overall, I actually like the Hawks offseason. Losing DeJounte Murray, as TK said, addition by subtraction. I think they've shown a path now for some development. There's talks about Okongwu starting over Capella, but keeping Capella. There's Jalen Johnson's going to break out once again. I can see a core forming here in Atlanta.
Do you think Trae Young is a part of it, or is he going to be getting moved as well?
Good question. I think he gets traded in the next year or two. If I'm the Hawks, I would trade him too. But without my opinion, I think he'll get traded, because I think the Hawks, I think they're too good to pick a direction with Trae Young, if that makes sense. If they want to contend, they got to get rid of the young guys. But we just saw someone like a DeJounte Murray. Obviously, the fit wasn't there, but it's so hard to see what they want to do. And if they want to rebuild and sell, then you can just get very good value with Trae, and then you still got a few young players, some picks to pair with Daniels, Johnson, Okongwu, Buskin, Sachet, list goes on. What do you guys think?
I do think they'll keep him through the 24-25 season. I think in the offseason, that could be the time where we see him get moved to potentially get their picks back from the Spurs if the Spurs are deciding if it's time for them to compete with Wemby. And I do think he'll be here for the entirety of this year, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. They'll try, but I think next year maybe it's going to be the year they decide to trade him away.
Next, we'll talk about the Boston Celtics. This year, they've extended Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Sam Hauser. They brought back all the core. They brought in Baylor Shyman, Anton Watson, Luke Cornett, re-signed, Nimas Kita re-signed, Xavier Tillman re-signed. So, and they've lost no one. So they've literally just re-upped with their core and then added the players I mentioned. I think it's a pretty solid offseason for Boston. Not much they could do. They've now got a big payroll, so they're banking in again on this course. I don't blame them. It worked, and it worked quite easily. What do you guys think about this? I'm quite high on Baylor Shyman. I said that I thought that if he goes to any other team, he would be a smoky contender for Rookie of the Year. Unfortunately, now he's not going to play for year 1, year 2, at least. Thought he could have been a Sam Hauser replacement, but they re-upped with him. What do you guys think about Boston's offseason?
Yeah, they just won the championship, so I didn't really expect a whole lot from them, and that's exactly what happened. They didn't do a whole lot. They just brought back, extended their entire core. I think their core 5 has been locked up on multi-year contracts, which is good. So yeah, so it's not surprising. And then Baylor Shireman, I think, is a good win now ready player. I don't know if he'll play right away, but he can, I think, contribute at some point in the season if there's injuries or stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they weren't really ever going to do anything else. You have to keep your core, especially coming off a year where they won the championship pretty easily. There wasn't much parity against them. And you look, they keep around their core 5 with White and Tatum both getting massive extensions. And they're really struggling financially in terms of, they're really restricted in terms of what moves they can do. So they brought back their core, which they should do. And they're going to stay competitive next year.
100%. Boston will be at the top, near the top next season, and they'll be ready for another big playoff run. Now to a team that will probably be quite the opposite, headlined by the ultimate Mikal Bridges trade, the Brooklyn Nets. Brought in Bojan Bogdanovic, Shake Milton, 4 Knicks picks, 1 Milwaukee pick, and most importantly, their own first round picks back. Killian Hayes, Zaire Williams, Nick Claxton re-signed, Keon Johnson, who I really like this re-signing, Jordan Watford re-signed, lost Tatum Diop, lost Mikal Bridges, and lost 2 Phoenix's pick and a swap. What do you guys think about this offseason for Brooklyn?
I love the value they got for Mikal. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar. He's never going to be the number 1 option on a championship team. But they got a very, very good return for him. And I do think that will obviously help them kickstart their rebuild. And that's exactly what they needed to do at this point in the season, because they're not going to be able to, in the offseason, because they're not going to be able to contend this year. And they were never really going to be able to. And obviously getting their pick back, that's a must if you're going to trade your star.
Yeah, this is an A+ to me. Just getting your picks back alone is a big thing. And then they got like a very, very good return for Mikal Bridges. A lot more than I expected. And now they fully committed to a direction which is now going to be a bit of a long rebuild. They got a lot of picks, and now they get a chance to go after a star in the draft next year in a stacked draft class. So they did well this offseason.
They've positioned themselves so well, as you just said, to get your picks back. I was shocked that they got their picks back. There were talks about originally Mikal going to Houston for their picks back, and even just 1, or just pick 3, and I was like, I just couldn't see it happening. The fact that they got it back unrelated and just had to give up the Phoenix pick. The Phoenix pick could be pick 1, hypothetically, it won't be. And the Nets pick could be pick 30. And I still think it's a win for the Nets, considering how risky it is to just not have your own pick. Love it for Brooklyn. And they also brought in Killian Hayes, Zaire Williams, Keon Johnson re-signed. These 3 people are just unproven young guys who you could just see if they have anything to show. Give them a year to bowl out alongside Clowney, Whitehead, Darren Sharp behind Claxton. Really like this offseason for Brooklyn. Fast tracking. They're the winners of the offseason for me in both conferences. let alone the East, and really good offseason for the Nets. They're going to have a very good tank next year, led by Ben Simmons sitting on the bench, last spot on the bench clapping. You've got Killian Hayes rocking out next to Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas his numbers are going to look insane, and the Nets have finally got a future.
Yeah, and they also bring back Claxton too, I think. A lot of people thought he'd be leaving for nothing, which would have been a bit disastrous, losing an asset like that for nothing, but now they have him and they can get more assets from him in a trade in the future.
100%. As you just said, I forgot to mention Claxton. Claxton's value will probably rise up. People see his importance as a ring protector with this young team, and I feel like his impact will be felt more, unlike a lot of guys who will call it empty stats per se for like guards who get big numbers on really bad teams. You can see his impact defensively more because he's going to have to be more important at the point of attack. With Dennis Schroeder and Cam Thomas up there. And I also like Dennis Schroeder here. I think he's a perfect guard for a rebuilding team. Veteran, knows how to like teach winning habits. But that's a lot on the Nets. We'll go to the Charlotte Hornets. Brought in Tijan Salon, KJ Simpson, shout out Josh Green, brought in him, Taj Gibson, the vet, and re-signed Miles Bridges, re-signed Seth Curry, not Steph. Lost Davis Bertans, Bryce McGowan, and Alexei Pokuchevsky. What do you guys think about Charlotte's offseason?
Well, I think a lot of the work was done in the trade deadline when they moved Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier and all those vets, PJ Washington. So in this offseason, there isn't really a whole lot to do. So I think getting Josh Green was a good move. I think he's a young player who still has upside to be a good role player. And they brought back Bridges too, which again, good asset management. You have a trade chip. You can get stuff back for him if you don't want him in your core. I didn't love the Salon pick, but again, we'll see. It's too early to make a firm judgment about that.
Yeah, I mean, Salon's one of the biggest project guys in this entire draft. It's a big hit or miss pick. And I mean, you look at where Charlotte is right now, that's not necessarily a problem. But if it doesn't pan out, that's going to look really bad in the long term. And like DK mentioned, they didn't really have much left to blow up. They're already they have a rebuilding roster. There's not much to get rid of. And they had a pretty quiet offseason in terms of like free agency. Salon was really the top guy that they acquired.
Yeah, as you said, they had a pretty quiet free agency. Bringing in Josh Green in that Klay Thompson trade, practically just giving up, I think it was just cash or a few seconds. I like that for them. He fits what Charles Lee wants to preach. Defense, run. I also like bringing Taj Gibson, the veteran, teach winning habits. Everywhere he goes, the locker room seems to be happy. But not much to talk about for Charlotte. They just got to keep on building up on this trajectory and just have some winning, fun seasons. Next, we got the Chicago Bulls. Brought in Martas Buzelis, Josh Giddey, Jalen Smith, Chris Dorte, a few second-round picks, re-signed Patrick Williams, lost Demar, lost Alex Caruso, lost Andre Drummond. What do you guys think about this?
They finally picked a direction which we've been hoping they would do for the last 2 years. They finally did it. So getting Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, I think, was a fine deal for them. They got a young player who they can develop. He's only like 21 years old, so he can be their future point guard. And then drafting Buzelis, I had as a top 3 prospect, and he fell to 11, so I think that's good. So they quietly have a nice core forming with some of their moves they've made. And yeah, bringing back Patrick Williams is a good move as well. So they did well to finally pick a direction, and we'll see what happens next with Zach LaVine or something.
Yeah, like DK mentioned, the Buzelis pick is amazing value at 11, and he's a hometown Chicago guy. Went to high school there, and I think that's going to end up being one of the steals of the draft. I think the only real thing they have left to do is get rid of LaVine, DeRozan's gone now in that sign-and trade, and Caruso, they get back another guy in Giddey, who will be really interesting to see what he can do. He's a really polarizing player. If he can develop into a good player in Chicago, then that trade will look good in the long term, even though they could have gotten multiple first-round picks in terms of draft capital. They chose to go with their guy in Giddey. They seem to like him, so hopefully he can develop into something for them. And I think that's going to really be the big hit or miss of their offseason, what Giddey becomes in Chicago.
Yeah, Giddey's the swerve factor in this. I predict he'll have really good numbers in year one with Chicago. A lot of turnovers. Pretty much how he's played with the Australian Boomers. Run, take a lot of bad shots, but attack the ring with force, but also turn the ball over a lot. And that's okay for a rebuilding team. Again, he got a lot of hate the last few years. I understand reasons why, but a lot of it were just the outside factors, non-basketball related, right? And he's still 21. We talk about how other people have room to grow, but a lot of people just tend to forget that Josh Giddey's 21 years old. He will be okay. I like the Jalen Smith signing. I thought he would end up on like a contender, because I find him really promising and very helpful. I like that signing. Matas Buzelis, great value. Had him number 4 on my big board. Thought he was going to end up in Detroit at 5. Factor him to fall to 11, and as Mohit said, hometown kid, can't get much better than that. Next, we'll talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Extended Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. Brought in Jalen Tyson in the draft. Most likely going to lose Isaac Okoro. What do you guys think about the Cavs offseason? And I'm going to make a quick prediction early. The Cavs will sign Luke Travers, but we're not going to talk about it as if they will.
Yeah, I mean, the real interesting thing is to see what happens with Okoro. Still hasn't signed anywhere. He's probably the best free agent left on the market, arguably. And I like the Jalen Tyson pick. I think he was pretty good value at 20. I think he can be a really good player there. And then obviously they extended Jared Allen recently. And I thought that was really interesting. I was not expecting that, to be honest. So now you have Allen, Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley all on long-term contracts. It'll be interesting to see what they do with those 4, because that really restricts them in terms of trading.
Yeah, I thought for sure a big move was going to happen, like maybe it was Jared Allen or maybe it was Darius Garland, one of those guys was going to get traded. It didn't happen, and now they're basically running it back with a new coach, hoping maybe a new coach unlocks maybe another level for this team, which I guess it's worth exploring. I think if it doesn't work out, I think you have Allen locked up for more years, so more higher value in a trade. I like the Jalen Tyson pick. If Okoro is going to leave, I think he's a good replacement. I do wish they bring Okoro back too, because I think he's a pretty underrated wing role player. So yeah, we'll see what happens next with them.
Sorry about that, technical difficulties. Where were we?
Just talked about Cleveland.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. The Jared Allen extension really shocked me. I was so confident going into this offseason that one of the guys from their core 4 would be gone elsewhere in the new roster. And they're not. They're banking on a Kenny Atkinson. I thought as soon as Kenny Atkinson signed, I did think Allen would be one of the ones to stay. I don't think it's a recipe for success. I think Mobley's better at the 5. I think Jared Allen's a better player right now. Really like Jared Allen's game. But Mobley's better at the 5. Much younger. 4 years, 5 years. And it clogs the paint up for the guards. It's not much cohesion there. Although I like the value they re-sign these guys at, it's just an interesting offseason for me, which I don't really like. Next, we'll talk about the Detroit Pistons. Pistons made a lot of moves this offseason. Extended Cade Cunningham, brought in Ronald Holland, brought in Bobby Clintman, brought in Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., few seconds, Paul Reed, Wendell Moore, re-signed Simone Fontecchio, lost Quinn Grimes, James Wiseman, and Taj Gibson. Initial thoughts on this offseason, guys?
It was really interesting all season. I thought in the draft they would try to address their shooting more, but they went with Holland, obviously. And instead they decided to do that for free agency, picking up guys like Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley, who are good shooters. And it'll be really interesting because obviously this year doesn't matter much in terms of trying to compete. But they brought in these guys, especially Tobias on a really big contract. And I like them. I've mentioned it in earlier episodes. I like them actually spending their money instead of just taking salary dumps. So I think this can pan out, and he will be a good player just as a veteran guy there who can help space the floor for guys like Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, Asor Thompson, Jalen Duren.
Yeah, I like their free agency and some of the trades they made. I think getting Tobias Harris is a good pickup. Like all these guys can space the floor: Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Simone Fontecchio. All these guys good floor spacers, which is what they desperately needed last year. But their draft, I did not like it at all. I think Ron Holland, it just makes no sense whatsoever. Like, I get you want to pick best player available, but he won't be the best player available in that situation. You get what I mean, right? Like, there's no spacing or anything in the starting five, so how will he growth? That's where you have to go. I think they should have gone a better fit. I think that would have been best for the roster. And then I guess Bobby Clintman's okay at 37. I don't like him as a prospect, but I think at 37 it's fine value.
Completely agree there. Ron Holland, as you said, sure, best player available, but his weaknesses are your team's weaknesses. It just makes your team worse. 11-win team worse. Like, that does not make sense to me. Yes, they bring in Tobias and the rest of that core, right? But this is for the short term. What happens when the long term occurs? It's just such a risky move, which seems like a move they just made with no thought. I would have rather them go on someone older, like a Dalton Connect there. If I would have liked it, but I would have liked it more. I just don't like their offseason purely because of this draft. I like Bobby Clintman, so Ron Holland. Good player, Ron Holland, don't get me wrong. But the Pistons just address their weaknesses by adding another weakness. Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, those guys are very steady three-point shooters. But they're not going to help 2 years down the track, 3 years down the track. Most of them will be gone. Tobias' contract will be gone. I like Wendell Moore. I think it's something to show, but I don't know where the merits come from. It's interesting. It doesn't frustrate me per se, but I feel for the Pistons fans. I do. Next, we'll talk about the Indiana Pacers, who I think had a home run offseason purely by this move. Andrew Nembhard extended. They brought in Johnny Furphy. Shout out Johnny Furphy. Brought in Tristan Newton, Naraki Freeman, James Wiseman. Re-signed Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin, and James Johnson, and then lost Jalen Smith. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you mentioned the Nembhard extension. That is going to be one of the best value contracts in the NBA in a couple of years. I think he can develop into something great in Indy. He was amazing today in the game against Spain. And I think he'll be a really good player for Indiana in the future. That's an insanely cheap contract. And then bringing back Pascal, that was going to happen. There's no surprise about that.
Yeah, it was a solid offseason, not like completely busy, but they kind of just ran it back, and I think that's fine because you get to integrate Pascal Siakam onto the team for a full season and see how it goes, and maybe a healthier version of Tyrese Halliburton, and then maybe in the trade deadline you can maybe fix some weaknesses then. But Nembhard is a good addition. I think a good re-signing at great value. I think he's going to be a very good player. And then, yeah, like they brought back Siakam and bringing back Obi Toppin, also a good move. Their draft was really solid as well, so yeah, they did decent this offseason.
I like the value for Neymar's extension, 3 years, 59 million. I thought he was going to get more, to be honest. I didn't think the Pacers would extend him this offseason because I don't think Neymar would have accepted the offer. He did, so I presume he's banking on himself for 3 years to just grow, and then get a big payday then. It's got Jalen Brunson ascension to all-stardom or written all over him, in my opinion. He's got the same similar story, and in the words of a Fanspo user who likes their storylines, he's got a storyline written all over him for some stardom. I think the Pacers are bound to make a consolidation trade very, very soon. Benedict Mathurin, they got Benedict Mathurin. Jarace Walker won't even be in their rotation next year, I presume. They got Ben Shepherd, Neesmith's still young. Their rotation is very, very young. It's got a lot of upside to it. But I do think a consolidation trade is coming, and I'm very keen to see what they make there. Really stable offseason for the Pacers. Nothing else they could really do. I like it. Next, we'll talk about the Miami Heat. Extended Bam Adebayo, brought in Khalil Ware, Pell Larson, Alec Burks, re-signed Hayward Highsmith, Thomas Bryant, Kevin Love, lost Caleb Martin, and Orlando Robinson. Thoughts on this?
The Miami Heat have kind of been one of the more frustrating front offices the last 3 years. I think every offseason they've gotten worse. I think the first time they lost PJ Tucker, did not replace him. They lost, they lose Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, replaced him with Josh Richardson and Thomas Bryant. Now they lose Caleb Martin and replaced him with Alec Burks. Again, all downgrades. To be fair, their drafting's been good, but like their signings and their trades, or lack thereof, have just not been there. And they've once again become a worse team, and they have not maximized Jimmy Butler's final All-Star years.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that, DK. They have just, coming off of that finals appearance, especially 2 years ago, and now they've just failed to maximize off of it. They've lost key role players, and they haven't replaced them well. And I just think that's not going to pay out in the short term for a team like Miami looking to compete right now. I did like the Bam extension, though.
Completely agree there with you and TK. Well said. Miami, every offseason, they're in the sweepstakes just to get a big name. And most of that's unrealistic. But to not even make an on-the-margin trade or an on-the-margin signing whilst losing key role players for your team, PJ Tucker, starter, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, starters in the finals, Caleb Martin, starter. It's just a recipe for disaster. I like the Bam extension. I do. I think he's the best player in the Heat now. Jimmy's not fallen off the last few years, but he's progressing quite fast. His defense isn't the same. His offense is really flaky. And the Heat really need to maximize this last year, and they just didn't. I think they've had the worst offseason in the NBA. Bringing Khalil Ware, I like it. Bam's a 4, so a long time. I think he's a 4. We've seen him in FIBA. Yes, he's got stars next to him. But his ability to stretch the floor, make the defense honest, will help. Hopefully Khalil Ware is impactful off the runway straight away. But we'll see. Now to the Bucks. Brought in AJ Johnson in the draft, Tyler Smith in the draft, brought in Gary Trent, brought in Taurean Prince and DeLon Wright, lost Malik Beasley, lost Thanasis Antetokounmpo, and lost Australian Jalen Galloway. What do you guys think about the Bucks offseason?
Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee's in a really tough situation, both financially and then in terms of future assets to fix. And they couldn't really do much better than this. I really like the GTJ signing. I think he'll be amazing there. Could potentially start right away. And he should be a very good value contract on a minimum.
Yeah, for the resources they had, like the lack of resources they had to be able to get two really solid role players in Gary Trent and Torian Prince is a good move. Even Delon Wright's a good player too. Yes, yeah, and drafting was solid. Tyler Smith, I think, can contribute right away. AJ Johnson is more of a project. I think he showed some good stuff in summer league, which was a bit of a surprise to me. And hopefully, that's a sign of maybe he can be a productive player for them as well. So I think they definitely improved their team. Maybe a Damian Lillard bounce back, they could be back to be competing for being one of the top teams in the East.
100%. As you said, limited resources, limited room to work with, and you bring in two starters, role players in this league, and Torian Prince has done it his whole career. Gary Trent, really good shooter, which replaces Malik Beasley at that aspect, but he's a way better defender. And DeLon Wright, stable point guard, really good assist to turnover ratio, good defender, really good defender. They addressed a lot of needs there. Let's hope that with a full year of Doc Rivers, the offense can bounce back and their defense can restabilize. Now to the Knicks. Extended Jalen Brunson on an extremely team-friendly deal. Brought in Mikal Bridges, brought in Campaign, brought in Takome Dadier, Taylor Kolek, Kellen McCullough Jr., Ira Porty from the NBL, Campaign, as I said, Kato Bates-Diop, re-signed OG Anunoby, re-signed Precious Achua. They lost Isaiah Hardenstein, Bojan Bogdanovic, Shake Milton, 5 first-round picks, a swap, a second-round pick, Alec Burks. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I think they had an amazing offseason. I think they'll be contenders next year. Obviously, you mentioned Brunson. Mikal, I think, could be the final piece for them to really be able to match up with Boston. Obviously, you had to bring back OG Anunoby. Losing Isaiah Hartenstein will hurt. You're going to need Mitchell Robinson to really step up this year. And if Mitchell Robinson can do that, I think they can easily match up with Boston.
Yeah, it's a solid offseason. Mikal Bridges is a really good addition. With him and OG both on the wings, causing all sorts of havoc defensively alone is huge. And then their offensive value is also pretty high as well. And while they give up, I do say it's an overpay, but I mean, based on where they are right now they're one of the top teams, they had to make this move. And getting Jalen Brunson on a steal of a contract is great. I like the Tyler Kolek draft pick, Pacome Dadier, I like him too. Bringing back Precious Achua to be their backup center, pretty high on him as well. I think his defense will be very important for them, especially Mitchell Robinson not having the best health history. And yeah, I think overall great offseason. I think they should definitely be a big threat in the Eastern Conference to get out of the Eastern Conference.
I think this season will be a chip on his shoulder for Mitchell Robinson. He needs to stay healthy, as Tico said. He hardly does. But a lot of people wanted him gone this offseason so they could bring back Hardenstein. And I'm sure they're best friends because when Hardenstein was messaging Mitch every day during games, other way around, sorry, when Mitch was hurt, giving him advice to Hardenstein. But I think people are forgetting his value. He was a very good start of the year as a starter. He was good when he got back. But I think the most important player in this rotation is going to be Precious Achua. Undersized big, but he fits the Thibodeau mold. Very glad they got him back. He's going to have to be very crucial this year as the backup 5. And he's finally going to get stable minutes here on a winning team. And I'm happy for him. I'm actually really intrigued to see if Tyler Kolek plays. Elite in Summer League. I thought before Summer League he's a smoky to be in the rotation as a backup point guard. The Knicks don't really have a backup point guard. Deuce McBride played off the ball most of the time. Tyler Kolek, really stable point guard, really great assist to turnover ratio, good player. Interested to see if he gets minutes straight away and if he earns his way into Thibodeau's rotation. And Thibodeau is known for not really playing the rooks. Now for the Orlando Magic. Extended Franz Wagner, extended Jonathan Isaac, brought in Tristan Da Silva in the draft, brought in KCP, Corey Joseph, re-signed Mo Wagner, Gary Harris, and Goga Batase. Lost Joe Ingles. Initial thoughts?
Yeah, I liked our offseason a lot. We brought in KCP. I think that's going to be a huge signing for us. A veteran player to join our really, really young core. 3-and-D guy. He's exactly what we need in terms of floor spacing and defensively. And I think he's going to fit really well next to Jalen Suggs. And then after that, we brought back most of our key core guys. Mo Wagner, Gogo Patatse, Gary Harris. And then we locked up Franz long term. I think that was going to have to happen. You have to extend Franz. You can't let him leave. We didn't extend Jalen Suggs, which was surprising to me. And he's going to have a really big prove-it year in his contract year to see if he can earn himself a big payday in the next offseason. So that'll be really interesting to see how he performs this year, especially with KCP next to him.
Yeah, I like their offseason. I think KCP is exactly what they needed. They needed a guy that can space the floor, a veteran, can play good defense, guard multiple positions. Extending Franz Wagner on a 5-year deal, that's what you had to do as well. He's going to be your second best player. Jonathan Isaac, I think, is a very underrated player, and the Magic sees value. I think he's one of the best defenders in the entire NBA. So bringing him in extending him is a big thing. And their draft was good. Tristan Da Silva, I think, can contribute right away with his shooting and versatility. And they also brought back the role players and didn't really lose anything significant. So they've gotten better, and their young players should continue to get better as well.
100%. As Mo said about Jalen Suggs, he's going to get paid this next offseason. If he continues on the trajectory he played with last year as a really high elite guard. Can he be the point guard? We'll see. If he works as the point guard, I can see a team like the Nets, who will have a lot of cap space to open next offseason, throwing a bag at him. I like the Magic's offseason. KCP, toughness, elite defense, space the floor, and only losing Joe Ingles while bringing in these guys and re-upping Jonathan Isaac, who I love his contract. It's non-guaranteed, and it just relies on his health. But I think if he's healthy, it's great value. They've got nothing to lose with that deal. Really like the Magic's offseason. I think they're going to be very competitive in the East next year and build on what they did this season. Now to Philly. Extended Tyrese Maxey, brought in Jared McCain, Adembona in the draft, brought in Paul George, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, Caleb Martin, Reggie Jackson, re-signed Kelly Oubre, Kyle Lowry, KJ Martin, and lost D'Anthony Melton, Nico Batum, Buddy Hield, Paul Reed, Cab Pate, and Mo Bamba. Thoughts on this, guys?
Yeah, I also really liked Philly's offseason. And I think they've kind of established themselves with the Knicks and the Celtics as the big three in the East this year. Paul George, I think he's going to be great here. As long as he can stay healthy, I think he's a perfect star next to Embiid. And Maxey, obviously he brought back Maxey. That was always going to happen. Had to max him, had a great year. And then they really did a good job filling out their roster with role players. They got good contracts with Caleb Martin, Andre Drummond, Kelly Oubre, and I think they had one of the best, Eric Gordon as well. I think they had one of the best off seasons in the entire league this season.
Yeah, it's an A+ off season. I think they've planned this Paul George free agency for years now, and it actually came true. They got their third star, who fits perfectly next to their two other stars, Maxey and Embiid. Their draft was very good. I think Jared McCain's going to be a good contributor for the foreseeable future. And I think even Adembona, I think, has the potential to be a good backup center as well. And the role players, Caleb Martin, proven high quality role player on good NBA teams. And Andre Drummond, one of the best backup centers in the entire NBA. Eric Gordon, good shooter. Reggie Jackson provides some more depth and bring back Oubre, who was great for them last year. And Kyle Lowry, a steady backup point guard. Overall, all these are great signings, and they've got some good depth, which I didn't think they would have by getting Paul George.
Completely agree. The Sixers entered the off-season with a ton of cap space, which they could go two paths, bring in a star, they could go on two paths that I thought were the only two paths. They can bring in a star but have limited depth, or get role players. I was under the role player label. I really wanted them to go that type of path, but the fact that they somehow made it work bringing in Paul George whilst bringing in Andre Drummond, one of the best backup centers in the league, and we know Embiid's injury history is quite flammable. Brought in Eric Gordon, who was very good for Phoenix last year. Kyle Lowry was really good for Philly, so the backup, he's going to be very impactful. Kelly Oubre showed really good defense last year, really good offensive production. Reggie Jackson, some depth. So they brought in some really good role players whilst getting in PG, which I didn't think was going to be, and Kellen whilst I didn't think could eventuate. I think Philly had a really, really good offseason, and as Mo had said, they're going to be up there with Boston, the Knicks, potentially Milwaukee this upcoming season. Now, we'll talk about the Toronto Raptors. Extended Scotty Barnes, brought in Jacoby Walker, Johnson Mugbo, Jamal Sheed, Orich Chomch in the draft, brought in Davion Mitchell, second round pick, Bruno Fernando, and re-signed Emmanuel Quickley and Garrett Temple. Lost Gary Trent Jr., Mo Guy, Charlie McDaniels. What do you guys think about this? We'll start with TK, considering he's a Raptors fan.
Yeah, I like what we did. Wasn't too busy of an offseason, which I didn't expect, because it was again, we did all our work in the trade deadline when we sold Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. But so we were able to bring back quickly on a 5-year deal, which is what we needed to do. Same for Scotty Barnes, extended. And I like what we did on the draft. I think Jacoby Walter is going to be a really good player for us. And I'm very interested in Orich Chomche. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think defensively he moves like a guard. He can guard all 5 positions, and I think he's flashy so as a ball handler. I think he's got a very high ceiling. I think that can be a steal. And then Davion Mitchell, I think when in a bigger role can really show us to be a really good role player. And yeah, and I think that getting that Portland pick as well in that Jalen McDaniels trade, I think could be interesting, because that can be like a high second round pick, late first type of value. So I think we did well. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I thought Toronto had a pretty good offseason. They're going to be one of those mid-tier teams in the East. They have a good core with Scotty, RJ, and IQ, and then we'll see which of the young guys can really prove themselves. I like the Walter pick. I think that was pretty good value. And I think if Scotty can just stay healthy this year, let him have a full season running this team at his own, and I think they'll be a lower tier playing team. And it was a pretty good offseason overall.
Completely agree. They did what they had to do, continue the margin young guys, bleed in these young guys, and develop the core here. RJ Barrett has looked really good since he got to the Raptors, continuing this elite form for Team Canada. IQ, he was very good for the Raptors as well. Scotty Barnes had a really breakout year last year. These three could be better than people expect, and better than what I expected. If RJ Barrett consistently plays like how he played with Toronto Raptors, that would be very, very, very helpful. Now to the Washington Wizards, brought in Alex Sarr, shout out Perth Wildcats, brought in Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, Sadiq Bey, Jonas Valanciunas, Malcolm Brogdon, the first round pick 2029 from Portland, and then Bub Carrington, which was pick 14, brought in 2 seconds. We lost Danny Abdia in the trade, lost Tyus Jones, lost Landry Shamet. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I like their offseason. I think they had one of the best drafts overall. I think people are obviously overreacting to Sarr's. He had a disappointing summer league in terms of offensive production, but I do think that he's going to go down as the best player in this draft class when it's all said and done. I thought Bob Carrington can be really good in the future. I think Keyshawn George can also be good in the future. I thought they could have gotten more value for Denny Avdia. I think he can be a really good player on a championship level team in the future. And I do think that trade was the one thing that I didn't really like about their offseason. But overall, I think they did pretty good.
Yeah, for the most part, it was a solid offseason. I think the draft was solid. Again, Alex Sarr, I think, bats on the league aside, I think will be a really productive player for this team. And then Bob Carrington, also, I think is a good player too. Keyshawn George, I think taking a flyer on Sadiq Bey is good. I think he's on a trade chip, and he's got a very nice contract. It's only like $6 million per year. And Jonas Valanciunas and Malcolm Brogdon, I think, are more good trade chips as well. I didn't like the Denny Avdia trade. I think he should have been like a core piece for them. Like he kind of had a semi-breakout last year. I think he can continue to get even better. I think they'll regret this.
That Denny trade on draft night shocked me. I had no thoughts that Denny would leave this offseason. I thought they would bank with him. He was very good last year. Efficient from three, really good playmaker. He scored, put the ball in the hoop. I thought he was going to be a part of this core rebuilding. Yes, he's 23, 24 now. But I still think even if they had played with him, kept him for the first half of the year, they could have traded him at the deadline. His value could have already been higher. I don't really get the notion behind trading him there. I do like Bob Carrington though. I like getting him in. Malcolm Brogdon, they'll probably flip at the deadline. Jonas Valanciunas, who I like to sign him because he can be a good trade chip, but he can also help Sarr. Pretty good offseason for the Wizards. Lost Tyus Jones for free. That was expected. Brought in, lost Landry Shamet. Nothing much to that. Stable offseason for the Wizards, and that wraps up all our 15 teams here in the East. So we'll now go to the questions, which we missed last week in the Olympic episode. So, question 1. Do you think the Knicks and the 76ers moves this offseason put them on the same tier as the Celtics? We've kind of gone over this, so we'll answer it quite shortly, guys. I would say yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're in the same tier as Boston.
Yeah, for sure. I think they are definitely in the same tier.
Will the Pistons make the play-in after adding shooters around Cade? My answer to that is definitely not, but that's okay.
I think they're still a year or two away.
Yeah, they will. I think Ron Holland and Ausar Thompson are still too raw, and they can't really shoot either. Like they're part of the starting five, along with Jalen Durant. So I don't think they'll make the play-in.
Who will finish with the worst record out of the two? The Washington Wizards or the Brooklyn Nets? I've got the Nets, and I don't really think it's close. I think Kuzma will get them a lot of wins. I think Jordan Poole will get them some wins. I think Jonas Valanciunas will get them some wins. Whereas the Nets, Claxton can get you wins defensively. And I think their teams are completely, talent-wise, vast range. So my answer is the Nets.
Yeah, I also think it's the Nets.
Yeah, the Nets, they have like no offense whatsoever. Like I don't know how they're going to score points outside of Cam Thomas. So I think it's easily them.
What will the Bulls do with Zach LaVine? That one's an interesting question. I don't know what they can do. His value is so low, they're going to have to rely on him having a really good first half of the year, trade him at the deadline. Because if that just doesn't eventuate, I think he's just going to be a Bull to the end of this contract.
Yeah, I mean, his contract is really bad value as it stands, and he has big injury concerns, and I don't think they're really going to be able to get off of his contract that he's stuck with.
Yeah, based on what's been happening, I think he's going to be a Bull for at least this season, or at least the start of the season. I think he'll have a bounce back year, and I think he'll probably get traded at the trade deadline.
Who do you guys think are the biggest potential trade candidates in the East? We've mentioned a few like Jonas Valanciunas. I think Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, who we didn't mention for the Nets. I think they're bound to get traded before the NBA season starts. I wouldn't be surprised if the Nets end up with Isaac Okoro. I think those three guys are big trade candidates. I think Kenyon Martin Jr. is a big trade candidate with the big balloon contract. And I think they're the top 3-4 trade candidates. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like Martin that you mentioned. I think he's going to be a guy that gets moved. And then I think Kuzma potentially, depending on how well he plays in this first half of the season. I think he could be a deadline. I don't see him getting moved before the season starts. So.
I think maybe Bruce Brown is a guy that can get traded as well, or like Malcolm, during the season, maybe not now, but.
And who is a dark horse team in the East to make a playoff run? I would say, well, that's a good question. Dark horse team, I'm gonna say the Magic. I'm gonna interpret it like this. I think the Magic have a real chance to make the conference finals.
Yeah, I also agree. Maybe I'm a bit biased, but I do think it's the Magic. And if I had to pick a different team, I would say the Bucks. I feel like they're being slept on a bit. And if Dame can have a big bounce back year, and they have a full season under one coach instead of, obviously Griffin got fired mid-season last year. That really messed up their momentum. I think if they can have a full year under Doc Rivers, this could be the year where they can potentially get to the conference finals, or I think they can at least win the playoff series.
I'd say the Pacers. Now, this might sound weird because they made the conference finals last year, but I mean, I don't think anyone's really giving them a chance this year with Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Boston, and New York. And even some people still have Cleveland over them as well, so I think they have a chance to make maybe another conference finals appearance with maybe Halliburton and Siakam within a full year together.
What Eastern Conference team needs to rebuild the most? I find this one hard to answer because a lot of these teams are trying to contend. But at this point, I think I'm going to say the Miami Heat. It's probably an unexpected answer, but things are getting scary over there in Miami. They really need a Jovic breakout because their young core it's okay, but they're going to lose Jimmy probably for nothing. Bam's a good number 2 on a championship team. Tyler Hero, I think he's underrated at this point in his career, but I don't know what he adds for the future to his game. I think the Heat and their pick situation lack. What do you guys think about this question? I really like the question.
Yeah, I was actually looking for the Heat as well, actually. So I think they've been kind of in the 8th seed for like years now. I think at some point, it's time to start thinking about the future. Because I think right now they're just not good enough and they're not willing to improve the teams. I think they should start blowing it up.
Yeah, I like the Heat shout. Just to throw another name out there because you guys both said it. I'd say the Hawks. It wouldn't really be a full blow up because they've already traded DeJounte, but I do think at this point you have to try to get your picks back from the Spurs. You're not going to be good enough to contend. And if that involves trading Trae Young, and I guess they have to do it because I don't think you can let the Spurs have control of your picks for the next couple of years. I think that's going to really hurt them in the long run.
Oh, I completely agree. That's a really good point. I think the Hawks would have been my second answer. Trae Young, again, the Dyson Daniels fit next to Trae is so intriguing. But what's he going to get you? 11th seed, 10th seed this year, next year? And we don't even know if this feeble form of Dyson Daniels is gonna translate to the NBA. We're just projecting it to. I think the Hawks really, in the next few years, need to get rid of these DeAndre Hunter, Trae Young, Clint Capella. Sure, I would have thought the Capella trade market would have sailed about 2 years ago. Thought he would have been gone by now. He hasn't. But the Hawks really got to go full rebuild into this direction. I like Trae Young. I think he's very underrated. He's improved defensively, improved his ball handling, his shooting still elite. He's still very poor off the ball. I would love him to the Spurs. I would love him to New Orleans. Don't know how they would make that. Actually, no, not New Orleans. They brought in DeJounte Murray and the fit would be clunky. Sorry, I forgot about that. But I think it's getting to that time where they got to part ways early, or they'll be in a Portland Trailblazers Damian Lillard situation. Now for the last question, which I think this will be very polarizing to hear your answers. So I will go last for this question. Is Jaylen Brown better than Jason Tatum?
Absolutely not. I don't think there's any debate about that.
Nope, it's still Tatum. Tatum's still the number one.
Boring. Nah, just kidding, guys. I completely agree. It's Tatum. I think Tatum had a very good playoff run. I thought Brown's playoff run was better, yes. But Tatum's had to play out of position all season. He gained a lot of muscle, which unfortunately his shooting efficiency dropped because of that. He's had to play the 4. It's more of a 3. He's improved every aspect of his game minus his shooting. He's a very elite player, and I think people run with storylines with Tatum, including myself. I like the occasional trolling of Tatum. But what he's doing, what he did this season for the Celtics, won them a championship. He was the ultimate team player. I wouldn't have thought Tatum would be the one deferring to Brown, White, Holiday. When they got it going, Tatum continued giving it to them.
Yeah, the way he has evolved his game, I think, is very great. I think 2 years ago he was really struggling when he was like having like help defenders and double teams, which caused problems, and he was not able to really impact the game when his shot's not falling. And that changed in these playoffs. Like even though his shot's not falling, he was able to impact the game in many different ways, including defensively too, and in the playmaking. So yeah, I think he's taking a step forward as a player, not as a scorer, but like in other areas of the court, which has made him a more valuable player.
Completely agree. I think my only issue with Tatum's game is he has very bad shot selection. I can predict a lot of his moves, and I have in the past where he goes. One of his only moves is that curl crossover to the right wing at the end of a shot clock, when he's still got so much time to get to the cup. And I hope he takes it out of his game, because if he does and the shot comes back, wow. Jason Tatum's just very good to watch. Anyways, that's the wrap up of the questions. Anything you want to talk about else, TK? Olympics, a little quick talk about Team Canada versus Australia?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on your Australia's performance in the Olympics this year so far?
Man, it's really frustrating me. We were really good in preparation games, don't get me wrong, and I was really high on this team before we started. Game 1 against Spain, we were very good for the most part. We really let it slip at the end, but then we got two very lucky threes in the sense that it helped our point differential at the end. But games 2 and 3 frustrated me. Our coaching staff, this has been some very poor coaching. Nick Kay, I'm a big fan of him. He hasn't done anything offensively or even defensively this campaign. Coach has been imminent on keeping him as a starter. Patty Mills, turnover machine. Can't play next to Giddy. They just both turn it over. There's no cohesion between the two. I would be fine with Patty Mills coming off the bench. But Patty Mills, it's sad to say, but this campaign has been very selfish with the ball. And I love Patty Mills. He's a legend in Australian basketball. But our coaching staff has to know when it's time to bring him off the bench. And now it's time. For our quarterfinal game, if Patty Mills is starting, to be honest, I think Dante Exum has been very good for us in his 2 games this campaign. I think the starting lineup should be Giddy, Exum, Daniels. I still think Kay should start but have a really loose leash. And Jock Landau. I think Duop needs to get minutes. These 2 spurts he's played, he's been very good. Offensively, defensively, causing havoc. I just don't get the need to keep on running with 20 minutes of Nick Kay every night. Patty Mills, when the shot isn't falling, what does he add? Really nothing, because his playmaking has been quite disappointing. Love Patty Mills. Giddy's been solid. Our best players have been Dyson Daniels and Jock Landau, and it's not even close. We're very lucky to get through to the quarterfinals. We got to be better, because my words would be even more intense if we didn't get through. And I'm still quite frustrated, because our coaching staff preach about playing guys who earned it, right? And bringing guys who earned it. I was hesitant on bringing Dellavedova, but Dellavedova needs minutes. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's been amazing. He's played, in the 2 games he's played, he's a plus 10 combined. Hitting timely threes, getting timely stops. He's been very good, and he's our only pure point guard who can't turn the ball over. And Joe Ingles, love Joe Ingles. But bringing him just to cheerlead on the bench and go out with Patty Mills, go out with Dellavedova. Matisse Thybulle, I've said it before, he should be in this team. But not even him, Xavier Cooks, who played for the Washington Wizards a few years ago, he should be in this team. We knew we were going to play Giannis before we selected the team. We had to have a game plan set up. Giannis cooked us. And again, it's Giannis. He's a top 3, top 2, top 1 best player in the year, best player in the world. But we let other guys beat us, not Giannis necessarily. If we play like we have in the last 2 games against whoever we play in the quarterfinals, it might get ugly. Disappointing campaign. We've still got a chance to correct it, which shocks me, to be honest. But we just got to be ready. What do you think about Team Canada? I really like how you guys played against us. I think RJ Barrett, he is fascinating me this FIBA campaign.
Yeah, I think it's been fine. I think it's kind of a bit mixed. I feel like we've at times been inconsistent. Like our interior defense is kind of it's been not great, like as expected. I think at times we kind of fall asleep on that end of the floor at times, but we do lock in the clutch in the last 5 minutes. They really get locked in, and then they start executing well offensively too. But I guess SGA, he's been really solid. He's been double teamed a lot, and he's done a good job navigating those and finding the open guys and creating advantages that way. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and RJ Barrett's also been excellent. He's carried over his play with the Raptors into the FIBA, the Olympics. And Dylan Brooks and Dort have been really, really good for us defensively. Like whenever they're on the court, we're like a much better basketball team. And yeah, Olynyk, I think it feels he's kind of been phased out a little bit out of the rotation. They've been going with more Kem Birch. He's been more productive for us on defensive end. Olynyk's shots not been falling as consistently as we hoped for and what he has in the past. So overall, and obviously Jamal Murray, I think he needs to kind of step up if we want to, win gold in this Olympics. And I think he will eventually, but it's been a bit of a concern right now.
Yeah, Jamal Murray's. It's sad to see because he didn't have a good playoff run, right? He had 1.5 good games against the Lakers. Was very, very poor against the Timberwolves. Sorry. And this form has got way worse coming into the Olympics. And he was very poor in the preparation games. And Coach Fernandez benched him for Game 1 of the Olympics. I thought that would be a very good move for just Murray to be able to run that bench with them hard on his own. His efficiency this Olympics has been very, very bleak. And I really hope this isn't like a NBA fall off or something, because he has some injuries this past year. I hope Murray bounces back for Team Canada's sake, and I think he will. But it is concerning. I've liked Kem Birch for you guys. I just finished watching your game against Spain, and what he's producing defensively and running the floor has been really good. When he came on against us the other night, Australia, it was unexpected, but he provided some really valuable minutes. And I thought that could be very helpful for teams like the USA, Serbia, with big, dominant bigs. And hopefully he keeps on producing at this level, because he's been, as I said, really, really good. So we just kind of wrapped up Team Canada and Team Australia reviews. Mohit had to leave, unfortunately. So we'll wrap up the podcast here. Next episode, we're reviewing the Western Conference off-season. So send in your questions, send in your feedback to our website. Thank you guys. Thank you, TK. Thank you guys for listening to the Fanspo Hoops podcast, episode 6. This is Eman Robinson. We out.